What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday, mainly covering the NFL and a little bit of NBA, NHL, and MLB as the postseason arrives. But mainly, my favorite sport's the NFL. So that's where I like to keep it, and I think most of the audience does as well. And you already know, week 3, pretty much for the most part, is over. We have one really exciting game tonight, but it was a crazy week 3. Week 1 set the tone, great week. Week 2 was even a little bit better as a football fan, not for me as a Vikings fan. But week 3, man, we have some chaotic games. Wasn't my best pick wise, but I'll take it if it means a really exciting day of football, and that's exactly what we had yesterday. From start to mostly the finish, the Sunday night game was a little bit of a dud, but it was a little bit expected with that, being the Giants and Chiefs. But Chiefs, obviously, we'll get into that later. But with that being said, like I said, what a great week 3. It was chaotic, blocked field goals back and forth, games, crazy upsets, it coming down the wire. But with that being said, we'll get right into it and just kind of recap each game, using NFL Sunday Ticket. I tried to watch as most of the games as possible and just keep up to date with everything. And, there was a lot of good, a lot of bad, but that's the beauty of NFL. In any given Sunday, anything can happen. And yeah, it was just overall a great day. And we'll just start right into it with the Steelers versus Patriots. In this game, I had the Patriots, and the story of this game was, in my opinion, the Patriots were the better team, but the Steelers were the more disciplined team. And that's why the Steelers were able to pick up this win. When you have 4 fumbles, an interception, so 5 turnovers on the day, you're not going to win the game. And the Steelers came up with timely fumble recoveries. They were just swan after the ball, or Ramondre Stevenson fumbling on the goal line. The Patriots, any drive they were having, Drake May fumbled. It was just chaotic. And then the Steelers, when the offense needed to, Aaron Rodgers finds Calvin Austin for a big go-ahead touchdown after the offense kind of stalled out after a little bit of success early in the first half. And yeah, like I said, the story for the Patriots is the turnovers, and you just cannot have that happen. And I think the Steelers defense used that to get a little bit of momentum back in their favor. TJ Watt was kind of flying after the plays. He had 2 sacks today, so it looked like his former defensive player of the year self. Cam Hayward batting the ball up to save a touchdown and get tipped right at the goal line. So the Steelers defense came up big in this one. Obviously, when you allow 14 points against anyone, that's pretty much a win. But just to get the turnovers they had, it was truly amazing. And then obviously the last drive, Patriots are driving. They have like a 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Drake May finds Demario Douglas, but he kind of spins around instead of just trying to dive forward. But, Demario Douglas is just trying to make a play there. It was a little bit unfortunate, but, this was just a crazy game. The Patriots, yards per play, success rate were the better team. But like I said, at the end of the day, you can have all that, but you got to take care of the football. And it kind of reminded me, of Bills Ravens last year, where the Ravens had all these more yards and, looked like the better team in the divisional round, but the turnovers is what lost them the game. And the Steelers, kudos to them. They bounced back after, being the undisciplined not knowing the rules last week on the kickoff return, Caleb Johnson. That really lost them the game versus Seattle. This week, they weren't going to let that happen. TJ Watt, like I said, it was great to just see him bounce back after having a slow start to the season, kind of end of last season too. People, were really pressuring him, have a big game. He was able to have it. But like I said, for the Patriots, it's exciting because they're a competitive team. But, it's obviously frustrating when you lose a game like that, no matter what the expectations are. And, shout out the Steelers. They just find a way to win some of these games every year. We're like, how the hell did they do that? But they pulled it off. And, I think my formula was right on this one. Picking New England, I thought they'd be able to move the ball, and they did. They just couldn't get it when it mattered most. The defense, for the most part, did a good job. But like I said, Aaron Rodgers clutched up on that foul drive when they needed to. Jalen Warren made some good plays in this one, just in the receiving game. And, hard running yards, his box score won't pop out, but it was still a great game from him. And, like I said, you just got to find a way to win some games in the NFL. And I'll be excited to see when the Steelers travel to Ireland to take on my Vikings, what that has in store. But it was a great game. Came down, like I said, to the wire. And, obviously the bounces went the Steelers' way. Next up, Jets Buccaneers. This game was a lot closer than what I expected. It looked like a safe pick, midway through the fourth quarter after Tyrod Taylor threw the pick 6. The Buccaneers went up like something like 20, like 6 to like, I don't even know. It was like 26 to like 7 or 10, it was like, okay, this game is pretty much over. But then the Jets offense finally got going. Tyrod Taylor and that team started moving the ball. They made it 26-20, and we're like, okay, like they're coming back. They scored a couple touchdowns. But then Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield leads a drive that puts them in field goal range. And then Will McDonald jumps over, blocks a field goal, cribs it to the house, less than 2 minutes to go. Jets take the lead 27-26. We're like, holy crap. Aaron Glenn celebrating on the sidelines, doing some crazy dance. And this won't be the last time you hear block field goals. Trust me about that. And this was like in the witching hour of the 4 p.m. games that I literally thought we were like in a different world with all these chaotic games and chaotic endings we were getting. But Baker Mayfield uses his legs, finds a Mecca Buka on some big plays in the final drive, and then they just do enough, and then they get into field goal range. No game-winning block kick here. The Buccaneers are able to hold on, and they get their revenge, for the missed kick. In this one too, Mike Evans went out in the fourth quarter, which kind of hurt. But Baker Mayfield has led 3 game-winning drives in the first 3 games to improve Tampa Bay to 3-0. And I think he just has that clutch gene something about him. He's just, he's easily proven to be a top 10 quarterback. He's been taking care of the football for the most part. And they're finding a way to win games. So Mecca Buka looks great. And the defense has made timely stops when it needs to. Obviously, in this one, they kind of let their foot off the gas in the second half, fourth quarter. But, it is what it is. But kudos to the Jets. They got blown out last week by the Bills. We think, this is the start of the tumble. They're getting destroyed by Tampa Bay. They're losing by like 3 scores. But they just kept fighting back. And, I think Aaron Glenn has the culture there. And Tyrod Taylor will be, a sort of serviceable backup when he needs to play. I do believe Justin Fields will return next week, but overall, still a great game, crazy ending. But obviously, Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield's clutch gene, that's what got them through with no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. I still believe Tristan Wirfs was out. So once this team gets fully healthy, it will be something to see, depending how much time Mike Evans has to miss. But it is reported Chris Godwin could be back next week, which would be huge for Tampa Bay. But yeah, they found a way to get it done. This offense looks electric, and easily the NFC South favorite to win that division again. Next up, and I did get that game right, so we're 1 for 1, 2 for 1 if we're including Bills Dolphins, but we already recapped that. Raiders Commanders. This is one. I picked the Raiders just with the Jane Daniels injury, the way the defense looked. I thought they would be able to do enough a Geno bounce back game, and nope. Commanders dropped 41. Mariota led the offense efficiently, and I love what Cliff Kingsbury did, going to Krosky Merritt a lot more in the running game. And I feel like that's what they need to do. They should have done that more, even with Jane Daniels and they were able to get that going. Mariota made the smart plays when he needed to. And the Commanders also some special order teams, punt return touchdown. And they were able to, capitalize on the Raiders' mistakes. And the Raiders, Trey Tucker had an amazing game, 3 touchdown passes. The offense did bounce back for the Raiders a little bit, but Gianti, still hasn't fully gotten going yet. And like I said, I think that defense came back down to earth after a great first 2 games. But, outside Max Crosby, there is a lot of holes on it. So at Washington, I did kind of overlook how good of a roster this was. They did get to the NFC Championship. They did add Deebo Samuel. It's unfortunate. I think it was the Commanders are the better team. Even with Jane Daniels, that was kind of proven. I was just kind of disappointed in the Raiders. And, I kind of overlooked the roster deficiencies on them. And, while I love Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, it's probably going to take a little bit longer than we expected. I think this offense can be good, but the defense obviously has a lot of holes. And, Geno Smith can is still going to throw an interception, probably maybe close to 1 a game. He's just a risk taker, gunslinger. He did have some beautiful deep balls. Like I said, I think Trey Tucker had 3 touchdowns on the day. So shout out Trey Tucker. But yeah, not the best look. Definitely Commanders, clearly the better team. Got this one wrong, 1 and 2. Is what it is. Got to move on. Next up, Texans versus Jaguars. Boy, I mean, I thought for Houston, there's just a lot of question marks now. You're 0-3 after back-to-back 10-win seasons, win the NFC South, and now you lost to the Rams, close game. Buccaneers, really close game as well. But the offense just can't get it done. Another stinker, 10 points. Defense was playing amazing for a while. And then I guess the only criticism for the defense is that they can't, get done the final drive. We saw against Tampa Bay. They allowed Baker to score a game-winning touchdown against Jacksonville, 10-10. Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas finally connect on like a beautiful 46-yard pass that comes up big for the Jaguars. But yeah, for Houston, CJ Stroud, couple interceptions. That offensive line still can't protect him. He's been under duress all day. Questionable play calling, just a lot of wide receiver screens. I know people are giving Bobby Slowick a lot of slack. I just think it's the infrastructure. When you have this bad of an offensive line, CJ Stroud's constantly under duress. And I think part of it is also on CJ Stroud. He hasn't looked like he's taken a leap in his game since his rookie season. And really, it's only him and Nico Collins out there. The run game without Joe Mixon is very inconsistent. And for Nick Chubb, he can't run behind this. He isn't, the prime Nick Chubb that he was back in Cleveland. He can't run behind this. And, I don't even know what to do for Houston because this defense is still elite, but the offense is so bad that this is one of my biggest fears. And I still picked them to win the division, but this is why I didn't really see them as a serious Super Bowl threat. They're just not that. They're not good on offense, that's for sure. And the defense, can only play so much, and eventually will get tired. And that's part of it. Why they're giving up points in these late drives is just they're worn out. And Jacksonville, it wasn't the most pretty game, but you found a way to win a tough division game. These two teams hate each other too. There's always some sort of fight, especially after the Trevor Lawrence, Al-Shazier hit last year. But Jacksonville got done. Like I said, Trevor Lawrence hit some big plays in that last drive to beat TJ, and they got done. They weren't as effective on the ground, Travis Etienne, but they stuck to it. We're just pounding away, and they found a way to get done. Like I said, this defense has been high flying so far with Liam Cohen. They forced Bryce Young into a lot of mistakes. They had Jake Browning throw 3 picks, and then they made CJ Stroud make a couple mistakes. So this Jacksonville defense has been much improved. Josh Hines-Allen and Trevor Walker, that front seven is getting after it. The secondary is making some big plays. They really only allowed that one big Nico Collins slip up, which, it happens. Nico Collins, one of the best wide receivers. Eventually, him and CJ Stroud were going to connect, but I got this game wrong. I thought Houston just had the higher end talent and more desperate to not start 0-3, but I was wrong. And now I think the Texans will miss the playoffs. And like I said, Jacksonville is probably obviously now the better team. And I think the Colts are also clearly also AFC South favorite, just the way they've been playing, but we'll get into them in a minute. But yeah, so 1 for 3 so far. Not the best start to my Sunday in picks overall. It was a rough day overall, to say the least, because it only gets worse with this one. Rams-Eagles. Rams went up 26-7, and I was lit, because I picked the Rams. I was like, I just think adding Devontae Adams, another layer to this offense, the defense only getting better, and the Eagles offense not looking great to start the year. I think it had the mixes for an upset, and I was looking right. Rams went up 26-7 after Kyren Williams TD. Biggest story was, though, even when it was 26-7, the Rams really were settling for a lot of field goals in the red zone. They were up 19-7, so that's a lot of field goals. Believe 4 field goals, so they weren't fully. It could have been like 35-7, even like 40-7 if they just capitalized on their chances, but unfortunately they didn't. The Eagles defense kept them in it just enough, so after the Rams were up 26-7, finally the Eagles offense got going. AJ Brown came to life. Jalen Hurts in this passing game came to life. They utilized Saquon. They were still giving them the ball when they needed to. And the offense finally started going. That was the big play. It was the A.J. Brown breakout game. Devontae Smith started to get some receptions. Dallas Goedert got a big touchdown. And it came back 26-27. Eagles go to score basically 3 touchdowns unanswered to take the 1-point lead. And then the Rams, Matthew Stafford, does what he needs to do to lead a game-winning drive for a 43-yard field goal. And earlier in the half, Jalen Carter blocked a Rams kick. And once again, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, those 2D tackles just block on the game-winning kick at the buzzer, and Jordan Davis returns it for a touchdown just to show off his athleticism and to boost up the Eagles' score. So it ends up being a 33-26 Eagles win. And for the Eagles, that's great because I think the offense finally broke out of its slump. I thought, a loss is what was going to take it, but no, this is what Super Bowl champions do. They're relentless. They don't give up. At home in front of that fan base, down by 19 against the team that was looking for a lot of revenge after the divisional round last year that had them on the ropes. The Eagles defense clutched up when need to. Quinyon Mitchell, Jordan Davis, they're making some big plays, some big 4th and short stops to keep the offense in this and just let them hum. Jalen Hurts, like I said, a big passing game, and he's a clutch QB because he may not ever have the best numbers, but when his number's called, he's going to deliver, and that's what the Eagles team does, and that's why they're reigning Super Bowl champs. I think for the Rams, this sucks because you should have won this game. No getting around that. But it shows you can hang with them. You're right there. Jared versus Byron Young. That front seven contains Saquon a lot better than they did last year. But yeah, the secondary, still a little bit of a question mark there, guarding those Eagles receivers. And like I said, Matthew Stafford played a good game. Missed some him and Devontae weren't on the same page. That was also a credit to Quinyon Mitchell. They did have that deep ball in the first half, but it's unfortunate. Nakua still looks amazing. Looks like maybe like he's, a top 3 receiver in the league at this point. Just what a stud, always consistent. But these two teams, I think, are pretty even. They're around the mic, but I think the Eagles are just a little bit more talented. And that's what separated them so far in these games. Talent finds a way to win. Even on special teams, such a big factor. Having Jalen Carr and Jordan Davis, just 2 athletic freaks lining up right there. Because 2 block fields, no coincidence. They're finding ways to make plays, and the Eagles are just so well disciplined on all 3 sides of the football. Even down by 20 points, they're not, panicking. Jalen Hurts has this calmness about him that's great, and it sucks because I did pick the Rams, and it's unfortunate they had him on the ropes, like I said, and should have won this game, but the Eagles found a way, and it'll be very interesting if these 2 teams match up in January. But like I said, for the Rams, this hurts, but it really shows you can compete with the best of the best. They're really the only team to give the Eagles a true test in the playoffs. It came down to that game-winning drive that fell just short. But if the Rams, you can't really hang your hat on it too much. You just got to bounce back. You're in the NFC West, a tough division, and you got to get after it next week. And for the Eagles, continue this momentum. It'll be interesting to see if Kevin Patullo in this offense can continue their passing game success that they finally found in week 3 in the second half. Next up. So I'm 1 for 4 right now, but the Colts saved my bacon a little bit. Getting this right, kind of a lock. No one's bragging about this, but the story is Indiana Jones, his nickname, Jonathan Taylor. This Colts offense is humming right now. I mean, they had to punt finally once, so credit to the Titans for that. Cam Ward made some plays. Obviously, the game started off rough with the pick six, kind of set the tone for what this would be like. The Colts were always in control for the most part. And Daniel Jones, like I said, just playing efficient football. Jonathan Taylor looks like a top 2 running back in the league right now, if not the best running back right now in the league. He's that good. This Colts offensive line protecting Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is using his legs when he needs to. And this Colts team looks legit. I'm not going to, say Super Bowl contenders or anything, but this is a solid playoff team that's going to be a tough out. That defense just make stops when it needs to. I think, the front 7 could get, a little bit better push up front. But I thought they did that. They were making Cam Ward scramble for some plays. And I think if that Colts offense maybe gets a trade deadline, gets another playmaker on that front 7, we could be looking at a team looking to make a deep run January. But overall, I think the AFC South favorites, the most complete team, the best offense in football right now, just in terms of everything EPA per play statistics. 1 punt in 3 games is absurd. And like I said, Daniel Jones just taking care of the football. Tyler Warren, a beast. Alec Pierce went up to make that insane contested catch. Michael Pittman scoring touchdowns every week. This team's amazing. And this offense is so much fun to watch. It's always great to see, it's not always the QB that fails. It's the system that fails him. And I think we saw that with Sam Darnold last year, and we're seeing it with Daniel Jones this year. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals versus my Minnesota Vikings. And you can't get any much better after last week. This was kind of a 50-50 toss-up game. I was worried, the Bengals offense, Jake Browning can, throw the football. I saw that 2 years ago. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they still have weapons, Chase Brown. But Carson Wentz was starting. They were at home. I thought, getting some players back like Darisaw, Van Ginkel, Harrison Smith would be huge. And boy, it was more than huge. The Vikings dropped 48 points. And it wasn't even the offense doing all that great. They played good. Carson Wentz, turnover-free football, a couple touchdown passes. But what we were saying needed to happen happened. Darisaw contained Trey Hendrickson, allowed 0 pressures. What a beast. He was even on a snap count. But Jordan Mason run the football, 2 touchdowns, 100-plus yards. That's what they need to do when they get to the red zone. None of this fancy RPO stuff. Just pound the football, Troy Mason. We saw what he could do last year with the Niners. What a beast. And then the story of this game is obviously the defense, but one man, Isaiah Rodgers, a pick 6, credit to Harrison Smith on the tip that gave the Vikings, I believe at the time, 14-0 lead. And then the Bengals, they're only down 17-3. They're still in it right before half. Isaiah Rodgers punches the ball out of Noah Fant, picks up himself, returns it for a touchdown, 24-3, forces another fumble from Jamar Chase. The Vikings, Wentz hits Jefferson for a big play, finds Hawkinson in the end zone. Or I think that drive, it was Mason Hawkinson he found in the second half. And overall, It was a historic day for Isaiah Rodgers, maybe the best performance ever by a defensive back. No exaggeration there. Even as a Vikings fan, it was just amazing. They got another fumble too. That wasn't even Isaiah Rodgers. Jonathan Allen recovered it. For the Bengals, this was just one of the worst games you could ever play. Jake Browning, the offensive line, all looked like trash. The receivers couldn't really do much, obviously, just with the QB play. Jamar Chase, obviously, fumbling, never ideal. But yeah, the defense was holding up for a little bit. They did a lot of that opening drive touchdown once to Oliver, but they were settling in for a little bit. And then just the end of the second quarter, they ran out of gas. I mean, when you're forced back out there like 4 times in 5 minutes, you're cooked. And the Vikings offense, the ground game, you just stuck to it, wore out this Bengals defense, and then the passing game with Hawkinson, Jefferson continued to develop. And this was you dropped 6 points last week with McCarthy. Obviously, now he's injured. You go to Wentz, you drop 50 points basically, and now you're 2-1, a much needed win, heading to Dublin to take on the Steelers. So I'm excited to see what this offense could do with Jordan Addison come back, everyone come back mostly healthy, and seeing another game of Wentz. But as a Vikings fan, you can't get more like this. This is a game you see once every like 10 years. This much of a blow, this many turnovers, like 4 fumbles on 4 drives. For the Bengals, the good news is it can't get any worse. This offense, I think Jake Browning, Chase Brown, even though that offense line is putrid, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, though they will put up points. It was just an awful game for them. And the Vikings showed their dominant front seven. They were able to contain the run after they couldn't do it with Bijan last week at all. It was just a really weird week in football, and this was one of the games where I did not expect this. Even as a Vikings fan, if you told me this, I wouldn't believe you. I would have called you crazy. But yeah, it was great to see Wentz just take care of the ball. Kevin O'Connell, just dial up quick plays, get Justin Jefferson the ball, TJ Hawkinson, your playmakers, and just pound the ball with Jordan Mason behind this offensive line they invested so much in. And even with the rookie center, if Ryan Kelly comes back next week, that'd even be an even bigger boost. But the offensive line looked way better. They kept Carson Wentz clean for the most part. He did have a couple sacks, but part of that's on the ball too long. But overall, for his first start, Wentz looked pretty good, and the defense obviously looked amazing. Vikings dropped 32 fantasy points in defense. And like I said, Isaiah Rodgers, shout him again. I was so glad to get him in free agency. And when you drop 2 touchdowns alone, I mean, just a historic day. And it was a fun day. But, also not that fun because I was like, by the third quarter, was pretty much done watching because I knew what the result was. So shout out my Vikings. They improved to 2-1. The Bengals are also 2-1. So there is a bright side of that, but they're definitely missing Joe Burrow right now. It'll be interesting to see how they respond next week. Next up, Falcons Panthers. This was honestly my biggest shock. Falcons, WTF. What was that? Michael Penix, 2 turnovers, did not look great. The offensive line was giving up some pressures. This Bijan Robinson honestly played pretty good, but it was just awful. John Parker Romo, after they cut Younghoe Koo, can't make a kick after he's making everything against the Vikings. And like I said, Michael Penix just played his worst game as a pro. And then the Panthers, they were able to just take care of the ball. Bryce Young didn't even put up, the best fancy stats, but he didn't have any turnovers. He ran for a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard also ran for one. This Panthers pick 6. The defense was flying. I think Carolina, one of the best secondaries in football because their pass defense has been amazing. Held Trevor Lawrence in check. Last week held Kyler Murray in check. And this week let the Falcons put up a donut. For the Falcons, I'm just really confused because this offense last week was just humming. Bijan, Michael Penix play action, even though Michael Penix didn't put up the best stats. Just finding, you have weapons, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. And then the defense was amazing, pitching a shutout basically against the Vikings all day. And the defense didn't play bad for the Falcons. I know it says Panthers 30, but just what happened? I mean, holy crap. That was a dud. And for the Falcons, I'm just confused because after that last week, I thought this was maybe a dark horse, playoff contender, could win that division, be right there with the Bucs at the end with the way the defense was flying around, the way the offense was making plays. But I think that just says more to how bad of a game it was for the Vikings than more of how good the Falcons are because the Panthers just dominated. Obviously, it's one game, 30-0. Falcons could come back next week and look great, but Kirk Cousins came in, and obviously I do believe Michael Penix will be the starter next week, but that was bad. Obviously, when you guys shut out, there's no sugarcoating it. But like I said, Carolina's secondary, J.C. Horn, those guys are flying. They've been quietly one of the best pass defenses in the league. And if Bryce Young can just play turnover-free football, this team can win some games. And we saw that towards the end of last year. So the Panthers, I think, are carrying momentum in from the second game, from that second half against Arizona, where they almost pulled off the upset. But like I said, I don't really know what to think of the Falcons. Very close game with the Bucks, came right down the wire, dominate the Vikings on Sunday Night Football in Minnesota, and then get absolutely dominated by the Panthers. So I really have no idea this Falcons team, but this is the beauty of the NFL. Any given Sunday, like I said, the Falcons could go out next week and look like the best team in football. But yeah, I got this one wrong. So that brings me to 3-5. Kind of just very shocked. But kudos to the Panthers. Like I said, the defense was amazing. And Bryce Young, was able to use his legs, just find Ted McMillan on some throws who had like 50 yards. It is what it is. I think the Falcons defense, like I said, wasn't really all that bad. The pick sixes, the interceptions that gave them short fields, and the Falcons going forward, not getting it. Very bad game. And I am curious if Zach Robinson is on the hot seat because he didn't have a great play calling last year. I know Kirk Cousins was injured, but he was just using a lot of pistol, and that's not what Kirk Cousins thrives in. And this offense just kind of really hasn't gone going so far. Even in the Vikings win, is more so the defense dominating and then Bijan doing Bijan things. But we'll see how they can bounce back. 1-2, Panthers dominate them. Curious to see if they can build off this momentum. Next up, Packers Browns. As a Vikings fan, I love it. I mean, obviously the Packers looked like the best team in football through 2 weeks, and the Browns somehow find a way to pull this off, even when it was an ugly game all the way through. I thought Cleveland's defense would be able to keep them in it for a little bit. Myles Garrett, obviously up front, the best defensive player in the world. But these rookies, the linebacker on the Browns, just with the green dot, rookie play caller, played amazing. This Browns front seven is just getting after quarterbacks right now. We saw it against Joe Burrow. And for the Ravens, for a good amount of that first half, they contained Derrick Henry, held that offense in check. Then the Ravens obviously exploded in the second half. But Packers could not do anything. It was 10-0 still Green Bay with like 3 minutes to go. Cleveland kicks a field goal. Grant Dilbert picks off Jordan Love. Short field. Quinshon Judkins punches it in. And then it's 10-10. Jordan Love leads the offense down the field, but a block kick again. Cleveland moves the ball just enough to kick a game-winning 55-yard field goal. And that's such great for the rookie because he missed 2 kicks in that Bengals game that costed them a win, but he saves them here and gives them a win. So Cleveland, this defense is amazing. It's exciting to see, this offense still has a lot of work to do. Joe Flacco's just kind of managing it, but that's all you need to do. Judkins, Judy, Njoku, they'll make plays. And for Green Bay, it's disappointing. Micah Parsons and this front seven still played amazing. They're getting after it all day. Their one touchdown they allowed was a short field. It was like 15 yards away from the goal line. So not much you can ask for the defense. For the offense, the offensive line was decimated. Zach Tom went out early. So if I were to say some concerns about the Packers, I think it's O-line depth because Jordan Love was getting pressured all day. And I think they are still missing like a number one playmaker. Tucker Kraft, Jane Reed, different guys can step up when they need to, but they really haven't gotten Matthew Golden going on all that much. I know he had one big play in this game, but just when you need someone consistently to go to in these big plays to pick up the third downs, to keep the chains moving in these grit and grind games, they couldn't get it going. And obviously, Josh Jacobs had a rough game. This offensive line really couldn't give him any room, but the running game, they stuck to it, but it really hasn't been that efficient so far this year. So I'm curious if that can change around because they are still giving him 20 plus touches, not in this one, but in the first 2 games. And it still hasn't really been that efficient, around like 85 yards on like 23 carries. They've still been able to find a way. But for the Packers, still one of the best defenses in football. This Matt LaFleur play caller, they still got a lot of weapons, but I do think, it's a kind of whatever game for the Packers. It sucks to lose this because you should have won. The Browns, we were considering one of the worst teams. I think we have to change that. This defense is so elite, and if they can just do enough on offense, they might win 8 to 9 games because they should be in the Bengals, frankly. So they could easily be 2-1. But, for the Packers, just choking this up 10 with less than 4 minutes to go is a stinker. For me as a Vikings fan, I'll obviously enjoy it, but I'm also nervous because we have to play both these teams, and both of these defenses look absolutely elite. So that's the other part of it. But yeah, with that being said, good for Cleveland to get this win. The dog pound really set the tone that, Kevin Stefanski, this team, they're going to play hard no matter what. And just being able to rally around this offense to clutch up when it mattered most was truly great. But yeah, like I said, for the Packers, even as a Vikings fan, they'll be fine. Was it a bad game? Yes, but 18 weeks, 17 games, you're going to have some bad games. It's just unfortunate, it came so early in the season after how great they looked in the first 2 weeks, but I know they'll bounce back. I think Jordan Love will get back on track, and this offensive line does need to protect him better, so we'll see about that. Next up, we move to our late afternoon window with Saints Seahawks. Saints, I was a little bit nervous with them going on the road, playing against Seattle. That was still banged up. No Devin Witherspoon, but Sam Darnold, this offense looks great. They had some special teams, I believe a punt return touchdown, but Darnold, Najigba, Kupp, Walker had a couple touchdowns. This offense, looks really good. I think after, the 49ers game, they redid some things. Darnold looks more comfortable. They're trusting him a little bit more. And that's what you have to do. This guy was an MVP. Not the MVP, but was an MVP candidate last season, played at a top 5 level. And as long as the offensive line can give him some protection, which they have been doing a good job for the most part so far with Gray Zabel up there, they look elite. They're just finding ways to score points. Obviously, an easy 4-4. And Mike McDonald is coaching up this defense to look elite. This was the first game the Saints did not look like they should be on the field with them whatsoever. And the Seahawks set the tone right from the beginning, jumped down them 21-0, block punt as well, too. So special teams is really big this week and helped Seattle pull away from this one early. But overall, shout out my boy Sam Darnold. I'm still rooting for him as a Vikings fan. Just what he did last year was amazing. And it looks like him, Najigba, Kupp looks way more involved. Barner making some plays. Kenneth Walker getting like 3 touchdowns. This team looks back. I think this team, them and the Rams, are going to compete for the NFC West title. Next up, Broncos Chargers. Another great game, and I think the difference in this one is Broncos are a little bit more talented, but the Chargers have the QB advantage, and Herbert stepped up. Just that throw down 20-13, avoiding a couple sacks, throwing a dot to Keenan Allen. That was amazing. And like I said, for the Chargers, the good news is, this wide receiver core, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey hasn't even gone fully going, but he drew some big penalties, made some plays. Quinn Johnson had a nice early on reception. I think the Chargers, they're probably going to win the AFC West. Herbert's playing, I think, the MVP so far through 3 weeks. He just looks so good. They're trusting him. Greg Roman is. Omarion Hampton looked like his best version so far, running hard, getting some receptions. I think for the Broncos, it sucks because they're 1-2, could easily be 3-0. They've had these games. The defense definitely bounced back. Herbert made some Herbert plays at the end, but you're going to expect that. The defense kept them in it for a while, forced a pick early after going down 10. I believe it was like 10-0. J.K. Dobbins looked great for Denver, but Bo Nix just missed some throws, some big overthrows that could have iced this game for Denver. I think Bo Nix at his age, we were hoping for a little bit more of a, quick step, just, with the amount of football he's experienced. But I don't know if there's a ceiling yet. I think it's still too early. We got to let it play out for Denver. But obviously, it just sucks when you could be 3-0 easily. And the offense really let you down this week when it mattered most. They left a lot of meat on the bone. And then last week, the defense obviously was a majority of it. But just that red zone turnover, I know it was tipped. It was unfortunate, and then obviously the field goal block call that led Indianapolis to kick the 45-yarder last week. It's just disappointing. But like I said, I think the difference between these two teams is the quarterback play. And Herbert's playing at a top 5 level. And I think after that, maybe that 4-interception playoff game was the best thing that ever happened to him because he looks like a completely different quarterback this year, the most confident he ever has. Jim Harbaugh coaching up that team, elite defense. Derwin James, Khalil Mack was out of this too. So once they get him back, expect even more. But yeah, they're flying around 3-0, just finding a way to win these close games in Division 2 against the Broncos, Chiefs, and then forcing 4 turnovers against the Raiders. So they're 3-0. Not only that, but 3-0 in the division. Great way to start. So shout out the Chargers winning a close one and coming back when it looked like the Broncos defense might be able to do it. Got that one right as well. So it was 2-0 to start in the 4 o'clock, but then things went a little bit south. Cowboys, Bears. Shout out the Bears. Bounce back game on offense. Caleb Williams looked terrific. 4 touchdown passes. Ben Johnson's play calling was pretty elite. I love that flea flicker, even though DeAndre Swift kind of threw that kind of high. Caleb Williams made a nice adjustment. And then find my boy Luther Burn. Loved him out of a zoo. Great to see him get some touches. They utilized Colson Loveland early on that big 30-yard reception. And that's what Bears fans were calling for. Use your high draft picks. And that's what they did. The offensive line played a great game. I think for the Cowboys, this is what you're going to expect. When the offense isn't perfect, CeeDee Lamb goes down early. Dak Prescott, just try to make some hero plays. We'll throw some picks. It's going to be back because this defense is atrocious, and we expect that with the Micah Parsons trade. So for the Cowboys to win games, they're going to have to be perfect, and they weren't early on. Javonte Williams had a big run that Stevenson just ripped the ball out. So that kind of set the tone, I think, for what this game was going to be like. And like I said, the Bears, much better, way to bounce back. After losing 2 division games, starting off 0-2, a heartbreaker to the Vikings, the Lions just drilling them where maybe already called for Ben Johnson to be fired, but they set a tone. And that offense looked way better. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be a good QB in this league. The accuracy is always something that they're going to be working on, but it's going to be baby steps. And there was a big step forward here, but it might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's going to be growing pains, but definitely the best Bears performance so far. And you can definitely see the vision. Dennis Allen, this defense responded amazing with no Jalen Johnson. They made plays when they needed to, and they were just flying around. No TJ Edwards either. So I'll be excited to see what they can do next week. But yeah, even as a Vikings fan, it's good when every team's competitive. And I think the Bears, they're going to be a fun team. Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams looks like one of the best QB wide receiver duo so far. So shout out that connection. Caleb Williams, 7 touchdown passes on the year. Definitely looks like he's taking a leap in this game. And yet, like I said, for the Cowboys, they're going to be exciting to watch because they're going to put up a lot of points. Hopefully the CD injury isn't too big, but the defense is going to stink. So they're going to allow a lot of points. That's what it's going to be. And that's what happens when you trade one of the best players in the league. And Trayvon Diggs is getting cooked out there. No Deron Bland. So it's really unfortunate for the Cowboys, but it's what you get with Jerry Jones. So I got that game wrong. I thought it was kind of a 50-50 one. I trusted Dallas's offense more, but I was wrong. Bears came out, played well. Kudos to the Bears. Nothing really much to be said. Next up, Cardinals, Niners. I picked the Cardinals. The Cardinals were my NFC West pick to win, and they were this close to starting 3-0, but still, I'm just so underwhelmed with this offense. And I know James Conner got that big injury, which, plays a factor into things. I think he's probably going to be out for the year. That looked like a bad leg injury, but Marvin Harrison had a big drop in this one, and this offense just doesn't look that great. I think the play calling's okay, but they're still the defense. Kudos to them. They were, doing a great job for the most part. Forced a turnover. They got the safety to give them the 15-13 lead, but the Niners, I feel like they've had so unfortunate missed kicks, with Jake Moody over the last couple of years. They bring in A. Pinero. They're down 2. I still feel like he's going to miss, but he nails the game winner from like 45 yards out. And Mac Jones, kudos to him. He's been playing pretty good for the first 2 weeks. Had 1 interception, but he's taking care of the football for the most part, just making the smart decisions, getting it to Ricky Pearsall, Christian McCaffrey, and is finding ways to win this game. This is what the Niners were losing last year, and over the last couple of years, just some close games. So far, they're taking care of business, 3-0 in 1-score games. So 49ers look good. Kyle Shanahan, obviously one of the best coaches. They're finding a way to manage it. And Robert Saleh has this defense much more improved. Fred Warner's flying around making plays. But like I said, for the Cardinals, just disappointing. You had this game on the ropes. They almost converted Murray to Dortch to end. That would have essentially ended the game. But the defense couldn't get it done quite in the end. Mac Jones was able to make some plays and some throws that get them within field goal range. But just a disappointing loss. And I think just the most disappointing thing is just the Kyler to Marvin Harrison connection that I thought would help lift this team to winning the division. Hasn't really hit. In this offense, the running game hasn't hit at all. It's just been disappointing to see, despite them still being 2-1 and really 1 kick away from being 3-0. I just don't trust either of these teams, I just don't trust the Cardinals. And I did forget to mention, I also do have the 49ers in this race, obviously, for the NFC West. It would be disrespect to not to once they get fully healthy with Purdy, IU come back, Trent Williams still on this offensive line, Christian McCaffrey, if he stays healthy. They are in contention. So I see it as kind of a 3-man race between them, the Seahawks, and the Rams. Both that being said, great win for the 49ers and a gutsy win. Sunday Night Football. This was kind of obviously probably one of the worst games. Giants offense looked like poop. I think we've kind of seen what they are. They're a one-dimensional deep ball, Mondale Robinson, neighbors, and that was not working last night. The Chiefs, I think, found something with Tyquan Thornton, but this offense is going to be pound the ball, not really run it that efficiently, and just hope to make some plays. And Thornton was able to make those plays. The defense picked off Russell Wilson a couple times. Mahomes, did some Mahomey things, did some good things. Had a fumble that he got back, thankfully. So it wasn't perfect by any means, but the Chiefs will obviously take a win to start their season 1-2, finally get on the board. And they just kind of are hoping now they have the Ravens next week, just kind of survive this patch until Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice come back. Worthy may come back next week, so that'll be a good boost to the offense. But the Chiefs, the offense doesn't look great. The most encouraging thing was the defense did look, like 2 years ago, last year, in a good unit, elite personnel. McDuffie, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis was getting some pressures. But yeah, I mean, just kind of this was kind of the game I expected the Chiefs were going to win. They were just going to be the better team, more efficient with the ball, and the more desperate team. Even though both teams are 0-2, the Chiefs are obviously held to a different standard than the Giants. But yeah, it'll just be an interesting if for the Giants. I think when Jackson Dart comes in, because they're already mixing him in some packages. But yeah, I think Russell Wilson at this point, we know he can throw a good deep ball. That's pretty much it. And the Chiefs, figured that out. They were on top of that. Like I said, the only good news for the Giants is Cam Scottaboo looks like an absolute beast, a great rushing touchdown, and hopefully the Malik Neighbors injury isn't serious because we know he's a tier 1 receiver in this league already. So hopefully he'll be on the field soon, and Brian Dable will need him on the field to save his job. But with that being said, yeah, great NFL Sunday for the most part. A lot of great games, a lot of blocked field goals, game winners, some crazy upsets in there. Shout out the Browns. What a day. And then we get to end it with a great Monday night game where the high-powered Lions offense, that high-flying defense with Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph get to take on, the MVP, one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time, probably the most talented quarterback of all time in Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, this elite Ravens offense, and also their elite secondary with Kyle Hamilton, Wiggins. It should be a great game. Marlon Humphrey. I do have the Ravens tonight. I do think, I just think they're the more complete team overall. And obviously having Lamar and at home will just be a big advantage. But I do expect this to be a fun game. If I had to give a score, I'll take, Ravens 31, Lions 24. Should be an exciting one. I think both teams will be able to move the ball. I mean, Lions dropped 52 points last week. Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown, J-Mo. We already know what they are. Hopefully, for fantasy purposes, Derrick Henry and Sam Laporta go off for me tonight, even though I only have like a 1% chance. Who knows? But with that being said, let me know your biggest takeaways from your week 3 games. What was your favorite game? Did your favorite team win? What were your thoughts on the games? What shocked you the most? What disappointed you the most? Because obviously, there's ups and downs. And then who do you have winning tonight? But as always, if you enjoy NFL content, make sure to like and subscribe. Would really mean a lot. Trying to get to 100 subscribers, hopefully by the end of October. Hopefully set that as the goal. But with that being said, as always, thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.